Hey fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Welcome to the review of the Wilson Blade 100. This is a relatively new model in the Blade lineup. I think the V7, they only have the 100 Lite, which is a stiffer racket. This one is a flexible, relatively speaking. It's a 60 RA stiffness according to Tennis Warehouse Europe in the specifications, with strings, so unstrung 63-ish stiffness, which means it's a relatively flexible but not noodle by any means, like meaning those really sub 60 stiffness ratings where you can really feel the racket bend. Some players love that. If you use a Clash, you know what that means. Some players don't. But this is a racket that deserves a lot of attention. Reason why is that it's placed like a Blade 98, which is one of the icons in the racket world, but it has a little bit more forgiveness thanks to the bigger head. And I think one of the biggest decisions for players these days is, should I go 100? Should I go 98 square inches? Those are the two most common head sizes. Smaller than 98, they're dwindling, they're not that frequent, but 98 and 100, that's kind of standard head sizes for intermediate to advanced players, which is the vast chunk of you watching this. Beginners should use a little bit of a larger head size, in my opinion. They can use 100. I think that's fine, but they should be aware of too difficult of a spec and might need some more help. So the Blade 100 is not a power racket. It's not a spin racket. It's a control racket with a more forgiving head size. Some competitors from other brands are Dunlop CX400 Tour, a racket I reviewed favorably. I really liked that one more than the CX200, which was the 98 version. You can also have a Pure Strike 100 1620, which is a little bit more powerful, but it's in the same vein of kind of a balanced control racket with more forgiveness. You can even take a Gravity MP, for example, put that in the mix, or a Speed MP. So those two rackets, maybe the Blade lands somewhere in between. I think the Speed MP might have a bit more power because this is still a control racket. That's the idea of this. Not like the most powerful racket ever, but quite nice. I think I prefer this over the 98 6019 because it has a little bit more in stock. With some customization, should be pretty cool, pretty good. Lots to like here. It's such a nice feeling on impact, still forgiving, still spin friendly, but not like extreme in any category. Very balanced, very versatile frame. I think this category of frames is something for a lot of players, and something if you're like an intermediate player where you're not exactly sure how to rank yourself, but you need a bit more help from the frame, but you don't want to go all the way to an aero spin racket, meaning, or a pure drive, which is more of a power racket like an E-Zone or an Ultra, then this racket is great. And as you can see, the beam is pretty thin, 22mm beam, pretty low stiffness, not a super open crazy string pattern, pretty balanced in the spacing, and not super dense in the middle either, so you're not going to get that pinpoint control that you get from a Blade 98. But this is not the target group. This is for players who like control, but they want more help from the frame. And it's great to see more and more rackets in this lineup. And this racket is still very good compared to the Blade V8. But it's not that much different, so I want to point that out. If you're a Blade 100 V8 lover, then you can upgrade or you can stay with your racket. It's not going to be a huge difference. I do find the new blades have a few benefits. They're slight, but there are a few benefits. I did say that before in my other reviews. The quality control in terms of specifications of the new blades have been spot on, the best I've seen in several years. And that's good to see. I've been complaining about this in pretty much every review video I can remember. And I've been doing racket reviews for a long time, as you might know. And now all the blades from different sources, I've bought them from different places. I've got them as demos from different places. They've all been spot on. So it's not like the company's like, oh, let's send a review demo to Tennis Nerd and we get a review. No, it's just they've been coming from different sources. And often when I get review rackets directly from the manufacturer, there's still bad specs. So the companies don't check the specs before they send it. It comes from some distributor, some warehouse, something, nobody checks it. I get a racket, it can be completely off. So I've never had that kind of, oh, let's give Tennis Nerd a great treatment of top-notch spec frames. Never happened. So what's new with the V9 versus the V8? It feels a little bit more solid. Like the sweet spot maybe a tad bigger. So it feels like the stiffness has increased a bit, although judging by the specs, not so much. but it just feels like it's a little bit stiffer, which helps this frame and helps the off-center hits and gives you a bit more power. So a tad of an upgrade, similar to the Blade 104, similar to the Blade 98s, but it's not going to be hard to switch to if you're already a V8 user. It's not going to feel very different. And you don't need to splurge if you already have a bunch of V8s. It's not like you're going to get so much more playability out of this one that it's worth buying if you're happy with those. But if you're looking for a new racket and you're not sure what to go for, you want something versatile that's not too difficult to use, Blade 100. Is it the perfect frame? No. But is it one of those frames that you should check out if you're not sure what to get? Yes. It is one of those rackets that I cannot pinpoint a flaw. The Dunlop CX400 Tour fell out of fashion with me. It was a racket I played some tournament matches with, not successfully sadly. Well, the doubles was, but singles I didn't do so well. Couldn't quite find my control with that frame. The racket felt like I need to swing it really fast all the time. And I did try to beef it up with some specs. If you've seen my heavy rackets video, I like to add a chunk of weight to the handle usually, because I'm a kind of old school player with a one-handed backhand who like a more headlight feed. This racket has a bit more control than the CX400 Tour and the Pure Strike 100. And so I felt that it was easier to use in stock form. And I could use it with like a 20 kilo tension, which is like 44 pounds. Or I could bump it up without being like a comfort issue because of the 60 stiffness, dampening pretty good, but you do feel the ball. So with Hyper G round, which is one of my favorite strings at the moment, alongside Luxon 4G, this racket has performed really well. And it could be a racket I take into a match, no problem. I do love the new Blade 98s, but this one is a little bit sweeter in terms of the help you get from the frame. A little bit more spin, a little bit more forgiveness, which on the fence can be quite important. Also, you get a little bit more on the serve. So I think for a lot of players that used to be maybe intermediate players who like control and they don't get enough spin on the shots, maybe technically they're not so spin oriented, I think a racket that is a bit more forgiving but still controlled is a great idea. And I do think this one is one of the best ones. The Dunlop CX400 Tour I still rate very highly. Percept 100D, one of my favorites. Those 100 range rackets with denser patterns, I like them. I would maybe have liked an even denser pattern on this as an option, like I would have with the Head Speed MP, which is also a good frame, but with the Speed MP, I felt that the pattern for me is a bit more open than on this one. So not as much of a fan of the Speed MP as I am of this racket. But this racket is great, and the quality control really impressed me. The cosmetic looks good. It's just a solid frame. I can't really say much about it. Yep, you're not going to get as good of a control experience as you get from a 98, most 98s, but that's not really what you're looking for. And for 100, it's very controlled. It's not for spin players, not for power players. It's for the big mass of players in between that might not be sure what racket would suit them. I think the rackets I mentioned in this video, and this racket as well, the Blade 100, whether it's V8 or V9, will suit that demographic. And it's definitely one of those that should be on top of the list, because it has that kind of versatility of a frame. So really like this frame. You should check it out if you're not sure what you're looking for. If you're not sure that you need more spin, more power, more this, more that, you might think that the 98 is a bit too difficult, which it is for most players. Then you might want to check out a controlled 100, because that's not that far away in terms of power and not that off in control, but it still gives you like a nice feel, a good playability, and a little bit more forgiveness when you need to chase down balls in the corners. And it does work well with customization. You can add weight to the handle, you can add some weight up in the hoop, but at the 320 swing weight strung, I think it works for most players. I might want to bump it up to like 327 or 330, but then it's great. So 2 thumbs up for me. Really like this frame. I thought it was the best Blade V9 racket, tightly followed by the 98 1619. I did also like the 104, but that's a bit much for my game and doesn't feel as natural for me on the one-handed backhand. So that's the Blade 100 V9 racket review. If you want more reviews, you go to tennisnerd.net or this YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you can, and check out all the reviews we have there of all different racket models. Keep updating that all the time. There's also predictions, string reviews, discount codes, everything you need. Your guide to tennis, tennisnerd.net. That's it for today. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.